All right, welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 40. Um, this is the James Hasty episode.
Yeah,
Um,
James Hasty episode. Actually, we can introduce ourselves, and then I want to riff a little bit on James Hasty.
sure. I'm Chris. I'm the philosophy professor and the Steelers fan here.
And I'm Ajay, the psychiatrist and Chiefs fan here. So James Hasty was a Chiefs cornerback, and he actually, I think he was initially like a Jets player, and then we got him in free agency in the late '90s, and he was one of my first like favorite players. He was a really good cornerback. I think he led the league in interceptions one of the years he was with us. I want to say he was with us from like it was somewhere around the like '97 to like 2001 range.
Mm,
Um,
that's plausible because I didn't follow football that carefully around until about 2001. So this is not a familiar name to me.
Actually, this brings about another question. So I kind of inadvertently got into this at some point in the last couple of weeks when I was trying to do something except think about the Super Bowl. And I was thinking about, do you know the first football game that you remember watching?
Well, I have a guess about what it was. Um, I think it was the 95 Super Bowl the Steelers lost. Is that right? They lost in 95, right? Gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Um,
so that's
I
funny
think that
because
was it.
that's also the first game that I remember watching, but I don't remember any details from the game. Like I have the
Yeah.
memory of watching the game, but I cannot remember like a specific play. I remember like a shot of like both teams like helmet logos on the screen. The Cowboys Steelers Super Bowl. But do you know the
Was it on
first game that you
ABC?
actually Ooh, that's too much for me. I don't know.
It's too much. I don't think I remember actually anything about the screen. I remember the television that I saw it on, and I remember this being in our kitchen back in Pittsburgh. Um, I think my dad was watching it. I remember this really old black, like cathode ray television. Uh, And I remember him telling me like we're like the Steelers are good this year. This is back when I thought we were called the Steelers because we stole the ball a lot. Uh, and then I was watching it and I said, I don't we don't seem that good or something like that. I don't know. Uh, but that's about the set. That's the memory, and probably this is like filled in with you know non like apocryphal like probably something there didn't actually happen that way. But that's my memory of it. That's weird that it's the same game.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know if I count it for myself because I don't actually remember anything from the game. So I used to always tell people that the first game I remember was the last game of the '96 season. The Chiefs needed to win to go to the playoffs. We were 9-6 and we were playing in Buffalo and we lost 20-9. And for as long as I can remember, I've been telling people that this is the first game that I remember. And then I don't know how, I don't or why, but I happened to like just well, I think I know why I was ignoring the Super Bowl stuff and just trying to think of other Chiefs content to watch. So I was going back into the '90s. And I realized that memories I have from certain games actually happened in games before that game. I just didn't realize those games were before. Like I specifically remember the Chiefs beating the Lions on Thanksgiving with a Marcus Allen rushing touchdown. And I just assumed that was in '97, but I was actually in '96. And even before that, I remember Greg Hill having a really big game and we won in Minnesota. So now that ends up being November 3rd, '96. So now that is the first game that I remember watching. I
Yeah,
remember watching both of those games, but I just thought they were later. I had no idea
yeah.
when they were. So it was interesting like going back and being like, "Oh, I actually remember these games." So that's
That's
the
weird
new
too,
winner
because
in the clubhouse.
it's like phenomenon of like you having like snapshots of your past and like trying to put them in the right order. Like you don't remember the order. You remember the images or the snap or the experiences, but the order is not there. And trying to like infer what the order was is a weird project, um,
And
but
it
a
can
fun
get
one.
especially complicated when you like watch highlights and stuff. I actually intentionally didn't watch any highlights because I wanted to make sure that I was confident that these were my memories. Because, for example, like I I feel like I've convinced myself that I remember my fourth birthday, but I think it's just because I've watched the video of my, like the home video of my fourth birthday enough that I have some like context for it. I don't think I actually remember it, but I feel like that becomes a problem when you watch a lot of old highlights. It's like, how much do I remember this actually
Mm,
happening versus am I just like putting what I've seen like back into that context?
right. Yeah. Yeah, I can tell. Actually, I don't know which birthday this is, but I have a memory of like, I don't know, my third birthday, which again, there is a video of, so like it's hard to know how much is genuine memory and how much is memory of the intelligence or whatever, as Proust would say. um, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, are you good? Or do you think you'll ever watch highlights of those games, or is it just like, no, we got to keep those as they are?
I, th- I think I will, but I want to be like, I feel like now that I'm somewhat confident that I remember this. Yeah, it's like, I don't think I've ever watched highlights of either of those two games, the Vikings game or the Lions game. At some point, I want to go back and see, but until I feel like I need to go back and look at other like games and make sure I don't remember anything before then. But once I feel confident in my memory, then I got to watch the highlights, see
Mhm.
how different they are from what I remember, because I'm sure they're very different.
I wonder what kind of experience that will be. Will it be like watching them brings like, oh, I remember what I was worried about when I was watching this, or like what else was going on in my life when I was watching. Like, I wonder how much will come back. Um,
If it gives some
because that is,
context.
yeah, yeah, interesting.
Those were
Oh,
pretty carefree days, I remember, because I mean, I just started watching the Chiefs, so I didn't have a ton of context, but I knew at least that the Chiefs made the playoffs every year because
mm,
I think to that point, the Chiefs had made it like 91 through 95. They had gone to the playoffs every single year. And so then they didn't in 96. And then 97, they were really good. They were 13 and 3. So I was, I thought we were just going to be good forever. And then we didn't make the playoffs for like until I was in eighth grade. So,
yeah. That's yeah. It's weird though, because typically you start being a fan when your team is fun to watch, right? It's like partly what gets you, like what sustains it, right? This certainly was true for me starting in like 2001 for the Steelers. Uh, and it does feel at that point like, yeah, well, we're just one of the good teams, and that's you know we'll never be at the bottom of the division. Um, I guess we haven't finished at the bottom yet, but it's been tenuous.
that's incredible. We certainly have multiple times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've had it solid. I'll say. Yeah. Um,
So, should we start with Steelers talk? I feel like we've only talked about the Chiefs throughout most of the playoffs, so maybe we should do some Steelers discussion.
sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess we could. Yeah. We'll see what I have like coherent thoughts about stuff. I think partly the issue right now is that, as I think with last offseason, there's like so much uncertainty that like asking a question in isolation, like what should they do at quarterback? I mean, that's a big one, so maybe I have more detailed thoughts about that. But a lot of the questions, it's like, well, I don't know. It sort of depends on like what we should do here depends on the whole picture, and I don't have the whole picture, so or at least enough of the whole picture to decide what moves we ought to make in what places. Um, but yeah, let's go. I'll probably just say I don't know a lot.
Well, maybe I should, we can start with a more like existential question about like the overall state of the Steelers now. How do you feel this year compared to last offseason? Uh, just gut feeling about
Yeah.
where the franchise stands.
Um, it's a good question. I think last off season at this stage, what was happening? We didn't have like we still had Kenny Pickett at this stage, I think. So,
Yeah.
um, and then I was like really, and I guess I have to talk myself into thinking Kenny Pickett's it again. I mean, remember we talked about this, and I think I did succeed, right? I did that a couple years. There's a couple years of talking myself into believing that. And right now, I think it's just harder because there's been so many just like different signals about what we're doing or want to do at quarterback, and I think that just indicates that there's not a definite plan really. Um, but it's I think it's harder to like be at a place where there's something to talk myself into. Uh, I guess I do think, as I said before, like Justin Fields would be like the smart option, but in terms of like I don't know at all if we're going that way, and so like it's hard to like motivate myself to like uh, think through how like carefully how that would look and what are the ways that it would go well, what are the ways it would not go well, because it's just so unclear what direction we're going in at this
Yeah, and
point.
it does. So, oh, wait, well, I do want to reflect though. I feel like interestingly, your like now that I think back on it, your off-season progression last year, like ended up kind of settling in a place that was pretty accurate. Like you kind of went on the Pickens roller coaster, then they traded him after getting Wilson. And I remember your thoughts on Wilson were like, look, like if he's just a little better than Pickett, then we could be pretty decent. And I remember just like scoffing and being like, he's a ridiculous person. Like he's not going to be that good. And he wasn't good in Denver. And you know what? He was a little better than Pickett. And for 13 games out of the season, it went pretty well. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I think that like there were certainly when we were 10-3 and he was playing well. That was like yeah, that's what one was hoping for at that point. And then it was just like the okay, but now he's going to play the way he was playing before, and you'll go 10-7 or 10-8. uh, yeah, yeah. I don't know, but I remember like I was on board with Russell Wilson when he came, right? Like it was like I saw the first press conference, I was like, "Yep, let's do it." Like we'll ride with Russell Wilson, and then it was a tough season too because he was gone for the first 6 games, and then, but I guess that gave us a look at Fields, and that was fun. So now that's what I'm clinging to. Like maybe Fields will be it, but I don't know.
I know it sounds like the rumors have included like the Steelers and teams that are potentials for Sam Darnold or Aaron
Mhm.
Rodgers or even Matthew Stafford, I've heard pop up. I mean,
Yeah,
at this time, those guys are being rumored to go a lot of places, so I don't know that being on that list is that informative, but what would you think about any of those options?
yeah. I think they're not exciting. I mean, and to various different degrees, but um, like if we signed Aaron Rodgers, I don't remember if I said this on here or where I said this, but I might just take the year off. Like it might just be like the Chiefs feelings podcast for a year or something like that, and I'll be there for it, but I don't know if I'm gonna be like, oh God, that's gonna be tough. Uh, that I don't think it's gonna happen, but uh, that would be that would be a lot to process.
I
Um,
don't I don't know that I could argue that having Aaron Rodgers, the whole picture, like everything about him, his salary, everything, is necessarily clearly more conducive to winning than having Russell Wilson. And you know me, I'm
right.
not a big Russell Wilson fan, but I feel like if you're gonna do that, just keep Russell Wilson then.
Yeah. Right. I think that's right. Uh, if you're gonna do that, just keep Justin Fields at that point, right? He'll be a cheaper option. I don't know. Yeah, that would be a lot. um, it's like hard for me to separate the sort of who they are off the field and whatnot from this sometimes. That's why it would be a lot. But yeah, I mean Sam Darnold. Like I mean, like maybe there's more to be excited about there. There's less off the field stuff, at least that I know about, that would be an obstacle to my getting on board with it. But um, I don't know. I think there was a point at which it looked like we were talking with the Jaguars too about oh my God.
About Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Thank you. Like we were rumored to, yeah. Apparently, there was a report that like we had inquired about, and I was like, oh no, like that's like if that's where we are, this is not like. we're in
What?
trouble. That's right.
Well, the I saw somewhere I this could be incorrect information, but I because I don't remember who said it, but I remember seeing that the Colts were rumored to that like the Colts said that there's a quarterback competition next year, even though there's like Anthony Richardson and nobody. Like I feel like that's like really ominous to be like we've got a competition. It's like we don't know who the competition's with, but
Who's
like
competing?
it's gonna be a competition. What if would that? What, would you rather have them take Aaron Rodgers or trade for Anthony Richardson?
Man, Anthony Richardson. I think, uh,
Wait, let me pose
and
the question this way. Is there anything what would Aaron Rodgers have to do as a Steeler to get you on board?
yeah, that's good. I guess if he looked like this is how cheaply one can buy me. But if he looked like, I don't know, 2015 Aaron Rodgers or something like that, and played that well, was I think he had a good year in 2015. Uh, was it an MVP? I don't know, one of those years where he was like really, like lighting it up. Yeah, that would do it for me. That's all. Just like 40 some touchdowns and like five picks. That that would be okay.
That seems, I mean, that would be, I don't know. We just saw Sam Darnold have a great year after I had spent the offseason talking about how he was Sam Darnold is so funny in that, like, I spent all offseason talking about how terrible he is. He went and played a great year, then was so bad in the last two that I was like, you know what? I
Yep.
kind of feel like I was right. Like
That's
I'm right back on
yeah.
board where I was last
Yeah.
offseason.
Yeah. It's like a even more extreme version of what Russell Wilson did this year. Like sort of Wilson was like a little bit more like not as good and then worse. Not well. It was like the same kind of trajectory, but like maybe the Sam Darnold one was more peaked, as it were.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
feel like Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, and Jared Goff are all quarterbacks that one could have different opinions on this year compared to last year coming out of the offseason. And I feel like I'm in the exact same spot with all three of them. Now, I'm not equating them to each other. I'm just saying I feel the same way this year as I did about them last year. Like,
mm,
to me, Jared Goff has the highest ceiling, but is still limited in ways. Like, I find Jared Goff to be just like Brock Purdy. Like, I feel like he's going to look really good at times, but I wouldn't want him to be the guy if the chips are down. I really needed something.
mhm.
Um,
He needed right. Right. He needs it to be. Is this right? I mean, feels like he needs it to be set up for him more than you want.
yeah, it's like Tua plus, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
Tua, Purdy, Goff. They're all kind of in the same realm. I think Goff is. I don't know if I would say Goff or Purdy is the best of those three. Actually, it's one of those two. It's not Tua.
How much of this is just, I agree. Do you think if he had a different face, we would still think this? Like, like somehow, and maybe I impute the play onto the face after long enough. But like, I see his face, and it's just not like that. He can't be that good, right? Like
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I would say that, except that like we got behind Peyton Manning's face, and
That's true.
that's not
Yeah,
an inspiring face either.
yeah, yeah. I guess that's right. So maybe, uh, maybe the play can influence the interpretation of the face at some point. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's at
Eli
least
Manning got
an
us to like
obstacle.
come around a little bit too.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess in terms of like to get back to your original question, like my overall feeling at this point is, I think a higher degree of, well, what is it? A higher degree of? It's a lower degree of excitement just because I don't know what I'm excited about. At least I mean, I didn't actually know what I was excited about last year either because it turned out Pickett was not going to be the quarterback at this point last year. But but yeah, I think it's harder to get excited when there's this much uncertainty about like who the players are going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other benefit from last year, it was kind of similar to the Chiefs last year. It was like, I don't know that, I mean, we looked really bad, and yet it was still pretty good. So it can't get worse than this, can it? I feel like that was kind of both of our mentalities on different scales. I mean, I know we had just won the Super Bowl, but at the same time, it was just kind of like we won the Super Bowl and our offense looks that bad. Like it's got to be better than this, right? And I feel like it was the same thing with the Steelers. Like Canada was gone. Like it was this weird offense. It was like, well, it's got to. We went 10-7. It's got to get better. And I don't know. One could argue maybe it didn't get better for either of us, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have excuses of like tons of injuries on offense and whatnot, but I mean, I'd be curious if you think that's really the culprit or if there's more going on there. Um, but yeah, I mean, at least it felt better at, for long stretches this year. Like it felt like we were making progress. Um, and then we just face planted and couldn't get up. Uh, yeah.
do
Um,
you? I know I'm throwing a lot of. I feel like this has been my most tangential podcast in a while, but with all the because I feel like we had this like big groundswell again of Tomlin frustration after the collapse from 10-3 to 10-8.
yeah. Yeah.
What would Tomlin have to do for you to lose faith in him?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, well, yeah. What would he? I don't. This is I guess illustrating my dogmatism, but it's like I don't know if there is such a thing. I think I would just like I'll just as long as he wants to be the coach, I'm happy to go with him, right? Uh, is that the right attitude to have? I don't know, but I do like I feel attached to him as much as well, maybe as much almost as much as I do to the team, right? So I think like what would make me this? I mean, if he was like somehow actively sabotaging things. I don't know. Like it's hard to imagine this, right? Um,
I feel like that's part of the problem, though, is I think it's hard to imagine Tomlin doing something that would make you not believe in Tomlin, right? Like
mhm.
he's built such a track record of stability. Like it's hard to
Yeah,
conceive of like what would like is Tomlin gonna go 2-15? Like how? It's hard to envision.
yeah. I mean, you can like try, right? You can just like take the 5 game losing streak there and just like try to push it out to cover a lot of the season or something. And it's like it is imaginable, but even then, like he would he would have interesting things to say about it, interesting perspective on it, and that would be like I was like, yep, yeah, that's insightful, right? Like, and I would feel like that was worth sticking with him because of his insight on a 2-15 season or something like that. And so it's like I don't know. It's like there's not much that would really make me want to move on from him just because of how insightful or eloquent he would his insights would be about what was going on. But, um, like, and part of me almost now that you say that, like, I don't want this to happen, but like that would be like seeing what he would say in that setting, like in press conferences there, would be very interesting and like a silver lining to a terrible season, maybe. Mm, so
It could be. I mean, I will just say that like at least for Andy Reid, when things have got because we've had the times. Well, I guess you've experienced this too, where you're like 3-4, 3-5, that kind of thing. And I feel like Reid gets increasingly boring the worse the team does. It just kind of
yeah,
says the same thing, like I take full responsibility, got to get the players ready. And I know Tomlin's not really that kind of guy, so maybe he would still have things to say. But I almost like just because even about the Super Bowl, like, did you hear what Andy Reid? Andy Reid was like, it was a bad day to have a bad day. I was like, all right, well, that gives me closure, Andy. Thanks. Like,
yeah, right. Yeah. Uh, that's true. So it might end up being like actually like there's no silver lining there, right? It might just be like, well, We're not doing things you need to do to win games or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
that's, I can tell you that
We're
too.
not doing the routine routinely. I like
Yeah,
that one. That's a good
that
one.
is yeah. Um, but I still think there would be nuggets, and those nuggets would be interesting, right? Um, I don't know. Not that I want to go 2-15. Let's like be clear here. That would suck. But there would be a modicum of interestingness to it, even then.
What is the most number of games the Steelers have lost in your fandom? Have they lost 10?
Yeah, we went 6-10 in 2003, and then we drafted Ben Roethlisberger. That was it. That was worth it.
That's the worst one? 10 losses?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
We've
yeah. It's
lost
been nice,
14 games twice.
and that was back in the 16 game season.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, 10. Hmm. We,
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't go, I think we've only been worse than 10 three times. We went 4 and 12 and we've been 2 and 14 twice. I think that's it. Oh, you know
What
what?
do you
We've been
think?
4 and 12 twice. So 4 times we've had more than 10 losses.
Is what's a what do you do after like a 2-14 season? Like, what's your
Not a lot. At both
not a
times
lot?
we've had a 2 and
Yeah.
14 season, we've like the coach has been fired and everybody, the GM's been fired, and we kind of
Yeah.
restarted. So there's at
And
least
it's
that
like at this point in
optimism.
the off season, you're like, I don't know what to hope for, right? Like that's kind of like where I am right now too. I just we didn't, just 'cause I don't know who's. Sorry, my dog's
You
on.
know, the funny thing is that when we went 2 and 14 the first time, and then we fired everybody and we got Scott Pioli and Todd Haley, I was like really excited because I
Mhm.
was like the Patriots guys, like this, Scott Pioli's come from the Patriots. He brought Matt Castle. I was like, well, these are winners. Like, oh, this is going to be great. Then that whole thing tanked within 3 years. We
But didn't
we went
Castle have a
full.
good year? Like he had a pretty
He
good
had
year
one
in
year
there.
where we went 10-6. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, we went 10-6. We won a really weak division and got the doors beat off. Like we just got blown out by Baltimore in the wild card playoffs.
Mm.
But it was optimistic. Like we had young talent. We were coming up. It definitely looked good. And then we went 7-9, and then we went 2-14 again. And then we fired everybody. And the
Yeah.
second time, honestly, I wasn't as optimistic because it was like we've just done this. There's no guarantee it's going to work. And then Andy Reid had been like at that point pretty like beleaguered in his later years in Philadelphia. Like Philly was tired of him. He had had that 4 and 12 year with the dream team, which led him to get
Hmm.
fired. And so I was like, are we sure he's got his fastball anymore? And then he came in and just completely turned everything around. So
And nothing but fastballs. Yeah.
yeah,
um.
I guess we got to
All
take
right.
a break. I
Yeah.
still haven't asked you any concrete questions, so I'm going to come back with some more concrete questions about
Okay.
rumors about the Steelers after the break.
Sounds good. And we'll do some Chiefs too.
And we're back. Um, so I'm going to pose rumors that I've read from various places, and we're going to assume that they are happening. And I just want your reaction on like what
Okay.
would be the case.
I like this.
What would your reaction be to this happening? Number
Yeah.
one rumor is that the Steelers are moving Broderick Jones to left tackle.
I mean, well, that was the intention, I thought, when we drafted him, and it made sense. And then we've just like said, never mind, and then maybe never mind again, and maybe I don't know. Like, so he's been like, I don't think that's fair to Broderick Jones, but I think that probably is the place that we ought to play. I mean, Troy Fautanu is probably the right tackle, um, if he's healthy. Uh, Dan Moore was good last year, at left tackle. At least, I think there were more struggles toward the end of the year, which you could probably attest with the film review. uh, but it's not like Broderick Jones is necessarily going to be better. So it's feeling like there's no good thing to do with Broderick Jones at this point. But it does feel like if he were going to play somewhere, left tackle would be the place to try. Um, but I don't feel like we've done we've put him in a tough situation. We haven't done any favors. Yeah.
It is very interesting how different the schools of thought are on like switching sides. Because I feel like linemen that talk about this talk about it as if it is a very difficult thing to do to
Mm-hmm.
switch from left to right tackle. But then like some coaches seem to be like, well, we'll just put him over here. And it's like I don't
I
really
mean,
understand that disconnect.
yeah. I like. Is this just a typical case of where like the coach is thinking is like minimizing how much effort this is, or like I'm sure that happens, but maybe there's maybe there's something to it, right? Like, are you just mirroring? I mean, you're not doing everything just mirrored, but a lot of the things you're doing are probably mirror images of each other, and so like, yeah, like actually, this is so like the pen spinning thing, right? Like, I remember when we were learning to do this, or at least when I like in high school, I sort of like learned it with one hand, and I was like, oh, I can do it with the other one too. Uh, and so like I think like if it's like that, then great, right? Like you just do it on you just do it on the other side. The same thing. You know what it feels like. Just do that. I don't know how much of this is like you know what it feels like, so just do that when playing right or left tackle. But I guess that's maybe the thought that it's just like oh, just do it. Same thing, other side.
Yeah, I think because what I've heard, at least Mitchell Schwartz, the former Chiefs right tackle, he does it, talks about it akin to like handedness. Like if you're used to
Hmm.
doing something with one hand, it's like very hard to do something with the other hand. And he was like
Except
that,
for pen spinning,
except for
right?
pen
Like
spinning. I'm
yeah,
trying to remember if there was much of a difference in my. I don't think it was that. I agree with that. It wasn't like I had to do it all over again, but I don't think it was like a seamless transition once I got it with one hand to do the other. I don't think.
yeah. Maybe I'm overplaying it. Like maybe there was, but like you feel like what like the spin is supposed to feel like, right? So
Yeah,
you
the
know like
right
if it's about
weight,
to
like
fall
the
out or
right
not.
amount of force. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's true.
yeah. But maybe this is
But
totally different. I don't know.
I'm also someone who, like, for example, do you brush your teeth with one hand?
Yeah.
Because,
Do
like, I
you
switch hands all the time.
really?
Like, I didn't realize that people brush their teeth with just one hand. I
I thought you
will
were gonna
just
say
go
you brush
back
them
and.
with like with both hands or something. It's like
But, like, if I'm
you
going, like,
really
to
get
the
in
right
there.
side, I go and then I'll switch hands to the left side to go left,
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
it's all left-handed for me. I don't know why that is, but
Hmm. Yeah, so I wonder too. I feel like I have been because like I'm, a little unsettled on my handedness. It's appearing increasingly to me that I was probably naturally born left-handed, but just culturally, you do a lot of things with your right hand in Indian
mhm.
culture, and so I like learned how to write with my right hand and I eat with my right hand. But I like play. I throw a ball or shoot a basketball with my left hand. And so it's like led to these situations where I kind of do some things with both hands because I don't
Mhm.
think I'm a hand confused person, I guess.
Uh, do you when you spin your pen? Do you still spin your pen?
Yeah, when I have a pen. I
Which
feel
which
like
is
I'm
your
not,
preferred hand? Do you have a preferred hand?
I think probably right because I write with my right hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
guess
just hold a
there's
pen
more
in my right
often.
hand more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. By the
Oh,
way, whenever you hear something drop, that's usually me dropping my pen as I'm spinning it during the podcast. It's just I can't. I don't know. I do this during class too, and it's a problem. So I'll
I
try to
just
stop.
have fewer times in my life now where I am holding a pen. I feel like when
Oh
we were
yeah,
in like high school and college, we had pens all the time. Now I'm like working on
that's
a computer all the time.
that's true. If I'm in a classroom with a whiteboard, which I haven't been for the last couple of semesters, I have chalkboards, which are wow, that chalk is really terrible. It's just like it's like in every groove of your fingers, like every pin, like you can't even wash it out. But when I have an expo marker, it's like I can't stop myself.
That
Um,
makes sense.
wow,
All right.
I'm oh yeah, sorry, I'm pulling this way off track here.
That's okay. Uh, let's do rumor number two is that the Steelers are moving on from Najee Harris.
That seems probably true. Um, And again, I feel like we didn't give him the best situation to thrive in. He had several years of Canada where basically it seemed like everyone knew what play we were running, uh, and never had a like really good offensive line situation. I mean, I do think he has his shortcomings in terms of his vision, but his power and I thought this year also his like sort of agility in the middle of the field was improved. So I do think we probably are moving on from him. I think he could be good somewhere in the right situation. He could be pretty good, but I don't think this was the right situation.
All right. Um, the Steelers are choosing Russell Wilson.
Uh, well, I'll talk myself into being excited about that. I think like I could do it. I think I texted you about this a couple of weeks ago. I was like, there was some rumor about like, oh, I think he posted it. Like he started like, oh, contract negotiations have started with the Steelers or something like that. And like, there's been so many rumors about this that, and this not being the case, so it's just hard to know what to believe there. But I was like, well, I guess I could get myself excited about that. You know, uh, maybe we acquire another prominent wide receiver or something like that, and um, you know, have another year in the system in Arthur Smith's offense. I could see that being, better than last year. Um, I don't know like what to compare it to from last year since there were like these two very different phases of the season for us. But if it was just like better overall than last year, then I guess that would be something. So I could get a little bit excited about it, but it would be like in that using that kind of argumentation. I don't know. It would take some work.
Would you need them to have another option at quarterback as well? Or could you talk yourself into just Russell Wilson? And I don't even know who else is on the roster at quarterback. Is
Um,
anyone on the roster?
well, I don't know if this Kyle Allen guy that was the
Oh, yeah.
third stringer last year is still. I don't know. I don't know what that
So if they
situation is,
go
but
into the year with Russell Wilson and Kyle Allen, are you talking yourself into that?
uh, well, I guess I am. Yeah. I mean, it's uh, one does what one has to do to survive. So I guess that's what I'm doing. Um,
All right. How about this one? The Steelers are drafting a running back in the first round of the NFL draft.
yeah. Well, I mean, we did that with Harris, and I'm not sure that was a good idea. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't his fault, but yeah. I think there are definitely places of greater need. That would be unfortunate, in my opinion. Um, that's the extent of that reaction. That's all, that's all I have there.
Uh, the Steelers are making a move for Cortland Sutton of the Broncos.
Yeah, he was on a lot of the radars last year. Um, I guess that'd be the kind of thing that make like we better do something at wide receiver. So maybe that's okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what we if we do that. Like, what are we giving up? I don't know. But we're gonna have to give up something no matter what. So.
And finally, the Steelers are going to make a heavy play for a free agent cornerback.
That might be wise. I I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but I would not think that was like that should be the top priority. Um, I would have thought, yeah, wide receiver or running back maybe or something like that was a higher priority. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do something like that. I don't know. it, we've done that a number of times in the last, 10 years or so. We've like Joe Hayden, for example. I should be able to give more examples if I say a number of times, but that's the one that stands out most. Um, um, yeah, not excited, but like,
We had Patrick Peterson. I don't know if that
yeah,
counts,
that's
but
true. I don't know. He was pretty old by that point, but yeah, um, yeah, I think that could be helpful. I, uh, I think we need more help on offense at the moment. That's where I would go.
all right. Well, that's all I had for the state of the Steelers.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot of uncertainty, but yeah, definite needs. So I have various sort of have scattered questions about the Chiefs in terms of all sorts of different, um, all sorts of different angles, I guess. Do you want? I could try to organize them, or if we could just go random. Do you want to go random?
Random's fine. I feel like
Okay.
this has been a random day. I went random for most of everything.
Yeah, that's true. I'm talking about pen spinning here. So, um, all right. So just maybe this is the least random, but like, how should Chiefs fans be feeling right now at this point of the off season after the Super Bowl?
Well, I hope it's a time of like taking a step back and regaining perspective. You know, that was a very disappointing Super Bowl. It's unfortunate that the Chiefs tend to lose Super Bowls in the worst ways.
Yeah,
Um,
what's going on there? Why is that happening?
I don't know. Although I think one could argue that there were actually quite a few similarities between them, namely
Hmm.
that the offensive line really struggled. They had good schematic answers for what the Chiefs kind of wanted to do, and the Chiefs were, and even Patrick Mahomes were slow to adjust. And I think that that was the kind of three major pillars of this Super Bowl, and that's the case in the loss to Tampa also. But I don't think that all hope is lost, or that there's any reason to think that the future looks any less bright than it did before the Super Bowl. Like, it would have been nice to be coming off of a three-peat, but I think the Chiefs, it's very important that they kind of hit this draft in a way that hasn't been the case since 2022. I think that was a really important draft, and the Chiefs kind of knocked it out of the park. It's an aspirational draft. I don't think we'll ever have a draft that good. The difference being that we had like 12 picks in that draft coming in, and we were able to use those picks to like maneuver around the board. And this year we only have six, so that's a kind of different situation. But I think, that there are a couple of things that the Chiefs need to look into. I think particularly we need an answer for left tackle, and we can kind of go into details about what that could be. And we need to continue to push for speed on offense. I think the offense looked really slow against the Eagles. Guys were having trouble winning quickly, and that contributed to the problem. And then, there are going to be some decisions about who to pay, who not to pay, and some of those are already been some very recent rumors flying about what's going to happen. So, but I think Chiefs fans should be optimistic. I don't think we're in any worse of a spot than we were than, for example, when we lost to the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. And this team, they retooled it. Mahomes kind of redid how he played, and he had, some might argue, I would argue, that 2022 was his best season. So I'm not concerned, although there is work to do.
Mhm. Do you think Rasheed Rice, well, if he comes back healthy, I mean, he would certainly help with speed on offense, right?
Yeah, I think Rice and Worthy is a great place to start, but I think they need one more reliable, and not like a star, but one more reliable person. Whether that's it, I think their opinions are mixed on Hollywood Brown. It's kind of hard to see, like, they didn't really use him as a reliable option ever in the season, and maybe that's because he missed the first 12 weeks. I don't know. I don't know what to
Yeah.
make of any of that, honestly. He, yeah, I'm not sure. I guess he missed more than that, right? I guess he came back in week 16. Is that right? Against the Texans? I can't even remember now.
I thought it was, yeah, it was right around the Steelers game.
Yeah, I
Was it
think it
for the
was
Steelers game?
or it might have been the week before.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
like, it was either the Steelers game or it was the Texans game the week before. You'd think I would remember this, but I don't. Um, So that's the question is like, would he be good enough? I don't have any problem with bringing Hollywood Brown back, but I might argue that you'd want just like one more guy, like in addition to him, just to make sure that teams can't like really key in. Because the other thing is we know that Rice is probably going to get suspended for the
Mhm.
drag racing or whatever kind of
Yeah.
racing and auto accident he had. So we can't count on a full season of Rice, and then we don't know what he's going to look like after the injury either. So you probably want a contingency plan that is more than just bringing Hollywood Brown back for the receiver room.
Mhm. Um, okay. I guess this is related to that last question, so maybe these are less random than I thought they were going to be, at least so far. But should going into next year, do you think the Chiefs Super Bowl odds should be conceived as just are uh, better or worse than going into 2024?
That's a good question. I would say probably, gosh, it really depends on the off season. But I would say if you're just going to say like this time last year versus this time this year before the draft, I would say like after the draft last year, I would definitely have their odds higher than currently. But before the draft last year, compared to right now, maybe about the same, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, there were holes then, and the big holes were wide receiver and tackle, and we drafted for those in the first two rounds. The tackle part doesn't seem to have worked out very well, but and I think now if you're looking, tackle is a big need. I would argue wide receivers a need. We just offensive playmaking, I think, is a need. Running backs a need, and on defense, you it really depends on kind of who's going. Linebacker could be a need, but I think we could kind of get away with who we have now with a smart free agent signing, and then safety could be a need if Justin Reed leaves. So I I feel like we have the same like huge hole, which is tackle. I think our wide receiver room is better now than it was last year with Xavier Worthy. So yeah, I think it's about the same as before the draft. And if we have a good draft, it might be the same after the draft.
Yeah, yeah. So, so the okay. Well, I mean, that's good, right? I take it that's good, right? Like those are nice. I mean, it was pretty good odds going into 2024, so they're still pretty good odds, I think, right? I think
Yeah.
that's reasonable.
I will say
Um,
that like in 2024, I really liked what they did in the offseason. So after the offseason, I would have said like, I remember my like unlikely but plausible thing was that the Chiefs might go 17 and 0.
mhm.
That it didn't pan out as well as I had thought it would. But I don't know that I'm gonna like the roster going into the season as much as I did last year because I really liked the moves they made.
But to be fair, I mean, yeah, and it like it could have been a lot different had the injuries gone differently early
That's
in the
fair.
year, right? Um, like maybe, well, I don't know. I'm not saying they would have gone 17-0, but they weren't that far from 17-0 as it was. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Um, what about what's going on with Kelsey? So he's coming back?
yeah. He's
That's my
coming
next
back,
question.
which I feel like this podcast has been telling you that for as long as it's existed. Like we never thought he wasn't coming back. We've always said that it will be the end of this season when you start thinking about retiring. I never ever for a moment thought he was retiring after this year.
Mm,
So yeah, and there was question if you when we had started this podcast, people were asking if he was going to retire after last year. Um,
yeah.
but I do think now at the end of this season, it'll start becoming a valid question. But Travis Kelsey's playing this year.
Okay. Um, long term at tight end, do you think they're set with Noah Gray, or um, uh, what's the plan there?
I think so. They have Noah Gray and they have Jared Wiley, who was a third round
Oh,
pick
right.
last year, who had a season ending injury fairly early into the season, which, interestingly, is how Travis Kelce started his career. He missed pretty much the entirety of his rookie season with an injury. Um, I think that Noah Gray and Jared Wiley are fine as a tight end combination, but the offense has to look very different. Like if that's going to be your tight end combination, then the receiving core needs to be more than just Worthy and uh, Rice. You
Hmm.
need another reliable option. Because Mahomes has always had at least two guys that he could just like continually count on, whether that was Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, or the year in 22, which was Juju Smith Schuster and Travis Kelce. And 23 was really the first year that he didn't have two guys that he could 100% count on all the time when this offense has been prolific. And so if Kelsey, one might argue that even Kelsey right now isn't that guy anymore. And so then it looks like Worthy, I would argue Rice is that kind of guy. If he comes back as he was last year, Rice is that kind of guy. And it looks like Worthy's going to become that guy too. So maybe that's enough, but then you want a couple guys that you can play. Now, Noah Gray can play well enough to be your like, I like Noah Gray as like a fourth option in an offense. So then you kind of need somebody above him, and I think you're
What's the
okay.
other? What do you imagine like a quick slot receiver or something to fill it like as a third option or what?
So I think of, I do think there's to me, it's more of like an X wide receiver, like the kind of guy that can, like if Juju was still Juju, like a guy that'll
Okay.
like come, get open underneath in zones, a guy that'll, be a backside receiver on a one-on-one and can get open. Once like Worthy will clear out, Rice will kind of be the power slot in my opinion, or like Worthy can run deep routes out of the slot. But I want a guy that just can win one on one. He'll be kind of like matched up one on one on the backside of a 3-by-1 formation, and he can just go win.
Mhm. Um, but you don't think like Juju was never like the quickest. So if you're looking for like speed on offense, that's not obvious to me that Juju would have been. I mean, maybe in his like maybe at like 21 or 22 he was pretty fast, but
Yeah, but he still got open against me, at least in
mm,
2022. Like whether it was the physicality of his routes, whether it was just the subtle movement in his routes, like he would get open. Like on third down, he could run a route on man, and you know he was going to get open. And that's the kind of guy we're missing. Kelsey used to be that guy, and he's not that guy anymore with the same reliability. He still does
mm,
it, but the problem we run into with Kelsey too is that he gets a lot of extra attention. And I do think if one were to critique Mahomes a little bit, is that when Kelsey starts getting a ton of attention, he will almost like see a double team or triple team on him when it's not there in a certain situation and not go to him.
mm,
I feel like, and Brett Veach kind of alluded to this, and when he was talking at the combine, that like sometimes Mahomes is getting a little too into his head, that he's like seeing things that aren't necessarily there because they've been there before.
mm.
And I think that one thing that the Chiefs, I think the big theme for this offseason for the Chiefs is they've got to get, they have, in my opinion, micromanaged Mahomes a little bit too much. He's thinking a little too much. He needs to dial it back a little bit and play a little more free like he was prior. And I think that's when he's at his best.
So prior, as in like what, like 2022 or so,
Yeah,
or
2022, I think, was the pinnacle for him because he struck the balance of like being trusting the play versus ad-libbing when he needed to.
mm,
Before 2022, he was much more of the ad-lib, like default to ad-lib, and he was so talented and teams weren't ready for it. Then when they adjusted, he went into this like nice balance, and now I feel like in 2023 kind of caused him to overcorrect. I think he lost faith in his ad-lib in 23 because no one like it wasn't working. He was running around, throwing it up, hitting people in the hands, and they weren't getting it. Or
yeah,
he's not had receivers that can track the ball downfield until Xavier Worthy for a while. Like even guys like Demarcus Robinson could track the ball down the field, and MVS did in his first year in Kansas City, and then it struggled a little more his second year. And Sky Moore, unfortunately, just never worked out. McCole Hardman never worked out with deep ball tracking. So I think he's missing guys that he has faith that I can throw it up there and they'll know to go get it. Like they can
Mhm,
track the ball and go get it, you know?
mhm. Yeah. Um, so that's like the ideal kind of like. So I could see like Juju. Juju could do that. I mean, maybe not a like he wasn't like a super deep threat, but he could track it. Um,
And he would go up and try to, he would fight for the ball.
right.
That
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate. Juju's like knee doesn't work anymore. I feel like that's
Yeah.
the only. Otherwise, he would be such a good. I mean, I still think he's a good. If Juju stays on our team and he's our fifth wide receiver, I'll be over the moon because he just does. I still think his AFC Championship game is one of the best single person performance this entire year by a Chiefs player. He was so good in that game.
Uh, that's that's awesome for him. Juju is like the one of the most likable players, at least for me. Um, okay. What should they do at running back? What do you think?
Well, that's tough. They've got to do something. I'm not a person that is big on devoting a ton of resources to running back, but what the Chiefs have tried to do is to kind of patch it together with guys with specific skill sets and put them in positions to best succeed. But they haven't really had an all around running back since Kareem Hunt got kicked off the team in 2018. I mean, Damian Williams was a pretty good approximation. Like, he did a lot of things well. But I, the thing is that if you're not willing to draft a running back in the first 3 rounds, I don't know that you're going to get somebody like that. So the most like frugal ideal situation is that somebody in the 3rd round is still there that's like an all around back and you draft him there. If you're not going to do that, then I think you just kind of keep doing the churn that they have and like look very late in the draft, find someone with a specific skill set and try to integrate them into the offense.
Yeah. Would you be in favor of taking someone in the first 3 rounds?
I think I would be okay with a 3rd round running back, assuming the first 2 picks went well. Like
Hmm.
if we, there's some people that are somewhat intriguing as like a potential tackle in the first round. Even, again, it's always going to be a project when you're talking about in the 30s, but
Yeah.
if we did that and then maybe came back in the 2nd round and got like a safety or a defensive lineman or something, then in the 3rd round you want to get a running back. Like I feel like I'd be okay with that. I
Hmm.
just feel like the first couple picks need to go pretty well for me to be comfortable with taking a running back up that high.
But you do think maybe a tackle in the first round is a smart move at this point?
Yeah, I think there are a couple tackles that I would be okay with the Chiefs taking. I don't remember names of everybody, but there's a tackle out
Yeah.
of Oregon that a lot of people have as like falling. The tackle out of Texas looks like he's going to go too early. But then there is a guy who played, I think his name is Donovan Jackson, who played guard at Ohio State, but people that know a lot better than I do say that he kind of projects as potentially being a tackle. I think they talked about this on the Kansas City Sports Network. That somebody like that would be interesting to me in the 30s.
That sounds like, I mean, yeah, but that would anyone within the 30s is probably like you were saying, like not a instant plug and play player, right? Do you think that
Right.
they need that?
Um,
Is it? I mean, I
I,
guess it's hard to say, right? You were saying like it just sort of depends on how they evaluate what went wrong.
I'm okay with them drafting a tackle in at 31, assuming like if we just re-sign DJ Humphries, like and maybe DJ Humphries with like an actual offseason of work. He was coming off the ACL last year and then he got hurt. With an offseason of work, if he could just be like, you're the stopgap, but we're going to have someone come in that's going to try to beat you out. I was, and I would have probably, if we had recorded this podcast like 10 days ago, I would have been like let's not just assume that Kingsley is done. You know, he only played 2 games and then came in for mop up duty at guard later. And he did kind of come in after Wanya Morris got hurt against Denver also for a few snaps. But, you know, we had drafted him to be our left tackle. We started him in the year being left tackle. Like, let's not assume that they're just completely out on him. But all the rumors coming from Kansas City is that they're cross training him at guard. So
Really? Okay.
it's possible then that we are actually like until like I see it, I'm not going to completely just assume he's never going to try to be our left tackle anymore. But I feel like it's fair at this point to be leaning in that direction that he might be playing guard. Now
Could they be
that
using
gets
him as like a swing, like tackle, like just a sixth offensive lineman, basically?
yeah. I mean, if at guard it looks like he would be too, like a swing
Mm.
interior guy because, or like a fill-in interior guy because the Chiefs suddenly have gotten very aggressive about re-signing Trey Smith after
Mm.
making it seem like we weren't going to. So then I thought maybe Kingsley would come in at right guard. Um, but it looks like Wanye Morris might be the guy that's like our swing tackle.
Okay.
And then we keep Jawan Taylor on the right, and then DJ Humphreys or somebody. The DJ Humphreys part is speculation on my part. I don't know that I've heard anything on either way about what we're going to do in that situation. But if you keep DJ Humphreys and then you try to draft a tackle early, I feel like that's okay. I'm not opposed to, you know, continuing to try Kingsley, assuming they see potential in him because he's clearly very athletic. The question is whether they think he has the technique to be a tackle. Maybe they just think he's better suited at guard, which is fine. You know, you picked a guard at the end of the second round. If he ends up being a good guard, like I don't care. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, all right. Well, my last question is, I guess it's in somewhat, well, I'll just ask it. How many more, give me your over under on how many more seasons before the Chiefs win another Super Bowl? Like next year being one, I guess. Right. So if they win in after the 2025 season, that's one.
So like how many I how many I think it'll take, or if I were to like set a betting line, what would I set it at?
Yeah, your betting line.
I think I'd set the betting line at 1.5.
That's that's reasonable. Yeah. What do you think it will actually take?
I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to see this off season, but
Yeah.
I'm not counting this team out. I feel like they're like especially because I think most everyone thinks this is Travis Kelce's last year. Like I think I would not take the over. Like I wouldn't be if that line existed and I was forced to bet on it, I would bet the under. Uh, and I know
Yeah.
that's crazy to bet like one like that. You'd hope you'd get really good odds on that because like you feel like you got to at least get like 7-1 or something odds on that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's a pretty dumb bet to make. But
But you're
um,
being forced to make this bet, and
yeah, if you're
hypothetically,
being forced to like gun to your head, I don't know, man. I'm not betting against them winning again. Like every time things have looked bleak, like the only year you can say is like they were up 21-3 against the Bengals and then blew that lead in the AFC Championship game. Like that's the only
mm,
year that I really feel like you can be like this team might have underachieved a little bit. And they started that year like 3-4, you know?
yeah,
And they started 3-4 and ended up winning 9 of their next 10 games and then lost the AFC title game at home in overtime.
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not betting against it.
yeah, yeah. That's fair. I mean, I think, I mean, from an objective perspective, how would you? I mean, like you have to expect they're going to be back to the Super Bowl in one of the next 2 years at least, right? Like probably both. Let's be honest, right? Like they'll probably be there both times, but at least one of the two, and they tend to win those more than they lose. So I think like even from like the really detached and partial observer's perspective, it's not that absurd to think. Like the 1.5 line seems pretty good. Yeah. So,
Yeah, because I feel like if you put the line at 2.5, then like I feel like you're definitely taking the under.
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like it has to be 1.5.
yeah. That's right. Um, okay. Well, that's all my questions for you. Are there other questions I should have for you?
Not
That's a good question.
not necessarily. I will just say to Chiefs fans, after watching the Super Bowl, I have seen more of that Super Bowl than I would care to make anybody watch. If you really want to torture yourself, there's a 3 hour, 27-minute film review I put up of the Super Bowl, and you can watch all of it. Um,
Do you feel like
but
making that like was psychologically damaging or helpful,
it
or
was
neither?
ultimately helpful, but it did lead to a lot of anger in the moment to like watching some of the plays and stuff because I think it was a combination of several things. I think number first and foremost, the most important, if I were to rank by like how impactful these are, number one is that the Chiefs' offensive line got absolutely dominated by the Eagles' defensive line. That's the most important thing that happened in this game. Number two is that the Eagles also just played very well. I think the way that people are thinking about this now is like, well, the Eagles were that much better than the Chiefs. I think the Eagles were better. I also think they played a lot better. I don't think it was like necessary. And I think I said this on our recap that like I feel like the Eagles would have won this game like 6 or 7 times out of 10, but it's not like it
Hmm.
was just like they weren't that much better than us. I think they played really well and we played really badly. And number three is that they had a really good scheme, not an unpredictable one. Like, I don't think they did anything that unusual, but they did something that was very effective against us, really kind of like overloading their match zone and letting their backside corner play one on one a lot. And I think sometimes Andy Reid tries to out scheme instead of just like letting players win. And I wish we had just done a little more with that backside one on one guy, like put Worthy out there. You really want to cover Worthy one on one on the backside? Like maybe if we throw a couple of shots, he's going to beat you one time. You know,
Yeah.
there were things that I feel like the Chiefs could have done, and then there were times when they did. You know, that Hopkins play that he dropped was a really well schemed up play. Like it was great
Mhm.
against Corden. It was really well done, and he dropped it.
Yeah, that was
And
painful.
yeah, so I know we're getting toward the end. I don't know if we want to do another break or if we just want to wrap up. Um,
It's a good question. We have to decide like ASAP. I don't know. Do I have? I have no more content that's like ready to mine, but maybe I could come up with it over the break. Uh,
at that point, we can wrap up and we will tease for next time. I will just say
okay.
before we run out of time that we will next week be trying to go over all of our predictions and we will talk about how stupid we were last off season when deciding what was going to happen this season. So look forward to that next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Until next time.